There's a reason you've always felt there's more, a deeper truth, just out of reach. Hidden in your brain is a tiny gland. Ancient cultures called it the seat of the soul, and buried in the words of Jesus lies the secret to unlocking it. Not metaphor, not myth, a real, biological gateway to divine vision. And once you understand what he was truly saying, everything you believe about prayer, light, and awakening will change. There's a part of the body mentioned only in whispers, a tiny gland shaped like a pine cone buried deep in the center of your brain. Science calls it the pineal gland. Ancient texts call it the seat of the soul. But in one of the most guarded layers of spiritual knowledge, it was known as the doorway to divine vision. And what if Jesus knew this? What if the teachings of Christ, those that survived the filters of empire and institution, contained subtle, encoded references to this inner gate? What if his words were never meant to be taken literally, but energetically? When Jesus said, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light," he wasn't speaking in metaphor. The phrase single eye is not poetic language, it's precise. It points directly to the pineal gland, the inner lens through which higher dimensions are perceived. But most modern believers recite these words without ever pausing to ask what they truly mean. Over time, the original context was lost, buried under centuries of dogma, mistranslation, and deliberate concealment. What remains is a fragment, a riddle, a whisper of a much larger truth. And now we're going to decode it. Because the pineal gland is not just a physical structure, it's a spiritual interface. And Jesus may have been one of the first to openly teach how to unlock its power. The ancient mystics understood that the body is more than flesh, it is a temple. Not in a symbolic sense, but as a living gateway between dimensions. The pineal gland sits at the center of that gateway. Modern science acknowledges its role in regulating circadian rhythms through melatonin, but what it doesn't explore is what the ancients insisted, that the pineal gland is also the antenna of the soul. In Eastern traditions, it aligns with the Ajna chakra, the third eye. In Egyptian iconography, it appears in the Eye of Horus, and in Gnostic Christianity, it is often veiled in allegory, hidden within symbols, parables, and visions. These teachings didn't disappear. They were concealed. When Jesus spoke of the kingdom of heaven being within you, he wasn't describing an abstract idea. He was pointing inward, toward a space of perception that only opens when the mind becomes silent and the heart becomes still. The pineal gland is the instrument through which this inward kingdom is seen. His words were always layered. On the surface, they comfort. Beneath, they initiate. The phrase, "Thy whole body shall be full of light," is not poetic coincidence. Ancient esoteric schools taught that when the pineal is activated, a bioelectric light fills the body, experienced in meditation, near-death moments, and mystical states. A literal illumination. Jesus wasn't hiding these truths, he was encoding them, and only those with ears to hear and eyes to see would understand. In the Gospel of Thomas, a text excluded from the canonical Bible, Jesus says, "When you make the two one, then will you enter the kingdom." This cryptic phrase has puzzled scholars for centuries. But for those initiated in ancient spiritual sciences, it reveals a precise alchemical truth. The two refers to duality, left and right brain, masculine and feminine energies, sun and moon, logic and intuition. And where do these dual currents converge? In the center of the brain, at the pineal. This isn't just philosophy, it's architecture. The inner temple of the human head mirrors the sacred geometry found in ancient holy sites. The pineal gland rests between the hemispheres, just as the Holy of Holies stood between the outer and inner sanctums of the ancient tabernacle. Jesus was revealing this map, not with blueprints, but with language designed to resonate with the inner listener. Modern neurotheology supports the idea that spiritual experience correlates with increased activity in the pineal region. But ancient mystics knew more. They understood that the pineal, when properly activated, doesn't just respond to light, it emits it. Light that is not physical, but spiritual. A radiant awareness that dissolves fear, illusion, and separation. This is why, across cultures and timelines, those who activated the pineal spoke of the same transformation, a sense of oneness, timelessness, clarity beyond words. Jesus pointed to this, not as a future promise, but as a present reality. But unlocking it requires more than belief, it requires alignment. The path to activating the pineal gland is not one of force, but of refinement. Ancient teachings warned that spiritual vision could not be accessed through the intellect alone. It required purification of the body, the emotions, and most of all, the mind. This is why Jesus so often spoke of becoming like a child, not in naivety, but in openness, in stillness, in presence. When the mind is quiet, the pineal begins to respond, not because of magic, but because of design. Breath slows, the heart rate synchronizes, the electromagnetic field of the body shifts. And in this alignment, the inner eye begins to open, not metaphorically, but perceptually. This is the place from which prophets saw visions, where mystics received revelations. But in the modern world, the pineal is dormant in most, not damaged, but calcified, spiritually and physically, by toxic environments, limiting beliefs, and disconnection from the natural rhythms of life. Jesus understood this. His teachings on prayer, solitude, and fasting were not just moral disciplines, they were technologies, practices designed to activate internal centers of awareness. He went into the wilderness not for escape, but for initiation. The silence of the desert became the amplifier of his inner light. And when he returned, he spoke of seeing beyond the veil, of a kingdom not of this world, a realm accessed not by death, but by awakening. The pineal gland is the lens. The teachings are the key. The question is, are you ready to see? There's a reason the pine cone has been used as a symbol in sacred architecture across cultures, from the staff of the Pope to the temples of ancient Egypt. It is the silent emblem of awakened perception, hidden in plain sight, and it has survived through symbology even when the direct teachings were buried. Jesus, like the ancient adepts before him, didn't need to spell out the mechanics. He encoded truth in parables, in vibration, in the energy of his presence. His miracles were not for spectacle. They were demonstrations of what becomes possible when the body is aligned, the heart is open, and the inner eye is clear. When he healed the blind, was he only restoring physical sight? Or was he pointing to something deeper, a blindness of perception, a veil over the inner vision? Even his crucifixion holds hidden meaning. The location of Golgotha, the place of the skull, is not coincidental. It is symbolic. The final initiation, the death of ego, occurs within the skull, where the pineal and the pituitary meet in sacred union. A resurrection not just of body, but of consciousness. Modern seekers chase external signs, but the real path is inward. The pineal gland does not need more information. It needs light. It needs stillness. It needs truth. And that is what Jesus offered. Not dogma, not religion, but remembrance, a return to what was always within you. The key was never lost. It was simply hidden where few thought to look, inside. What if the miracles weren't just stories, but instructions? What if Jesus wasn't asking to be worshipped, but to be remembered within you? The pineal gland was never meant to be a mystery. It was meant to be a bridge, a sacred point of contact between the divine and the human, not reserved for prophets, but embedded in the design of all beings, waiting, listening, ready. You are not blind. You are not lost. You are simply covered in layers of forgetting. But every whisper of intuition, every moment of synchronicity, every time your breath slows and the world feels different, that's it. That's the gate opening. That's the kingdom within, pressing against the walls of your mind, asking to be seen, not with eyes, but with the light behind them. And once you begin to see through that light, you'll understand why Jesus never needed temples or titles or thrones. He only needed stillness, silence, and one awakened soul. Now, the rest is yours. If this opens something in you, if the words of Jesus now carry a new vibration, then what you've seen is only a single thread in a much larger tapestry, because some of his most powerful teachings were hidden in plain sight, words repeated for centuries, memorized, ritualized, but almost never understood. In our next journey, we reveal the deeper meaning of the Lord's Prayer, a code that was never meant to be recited blindly, but to awaken something sleeping within you. Watch now, the Lord's Prayer revealed what they hid from you.